Hey, here we are, 5.5. We're going to be digging into the green revolution. This is going to go so fast, you guys don't even know. Okay, so first of all, I want you to understand that the green revolution is different from, say, the agricultural revolution. This is a response, and this happened around the 1960s. It was a response to this exponential growth rate that we had in the global population. And this allowed farmers to have production of chemicals and fertilizers so that they could produce more food. This hit more of those developing countries and impacted them more than, say, developed countries with this revolution. So the way your notes are set up, we have three big concepts: changing of plants, and then introduction of chemicals, and then some new farming methods. So I'm going to go through them, give you kind of a definition, and then I'll tell you how it was impacted. So let's first start with changing of plants, hybridization. Make sure you know what that means. That's like a crossbreeding where you have pollination. Like if a bee pollinates one plant, you are taking that pollination and using it in on an entirely different plant. And some examples of this would be like a lot of citrus fruits and even the peanut. So I put an example up there. The grapefruit and the tangerine have been hybridized to make the Tangelo. And the effect of this is, the biggest takeaway here is that you have shorter growing seasons. If you have shorter growing seasons, then a farmer can plant two crops, and that's called double cropping. So instead of planting one crop per season, they can grow two crops. All right, and then the next there is GMO, which you all, I'm sure, know. That's genetically modified organism, and that is where you are actually changing the genetics of a plant, in this case, and engineering it in a lab to have like superior characteristics. Okay, and then obviously the outcome is that you kind of get exactly what you want out of a plant. It's completely controlled. And then again, you're going to get higher yields with this. So that is hybridization and GMOs. Okay. And then we're going to go into the introduction of chemicals. You have three there: pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. And again, I'm going to just try to, this is pretty straightforward. I'm just going to kind of give you what it is, or an example of it, and what the outcome was. For pesticides, know that those are chemicals. They do spray them on the crops, but they are targeting the insects. So they're supposed to kill insects. Obviously, the effect of that is you have kept the crops from getting destroyed by the insects. Okay. The next is herbicides. Make sure you know this is also a chemical sprayed on crops, and it's going to not target insects. It's going to target weeds and any other invasive plants. Okay. And obviously, this is going to increase your yields and keep them from getting targeted by those weeds. And then the last is fertilizers. Know that this is stuff that they can put in the soil that actually helps plants grow faster. And again, this is going to, the effect is going to increase the yields of the farm, make higher yields. All right, last we have farming methods. And a lot of this is straightforward too. So let's start with machinery. So you have any kind of machinery that's going to be an advancement in harvesting. And the effect of that is it's going to decrease human labor. The next is irrigation. Those are watering methods. Some examples of those we heard about in the Food Machine documentary: those moisture soil sensors, sprinklers. These big things that I'm showing a picture of here, those are pivot control panels, and even underwater aquifers would be some of those irrigation methods. And the outcome of this is we have to become really efficient and more sustainable with our water. And the last is transportation. This is going to be specifically like trucking and shipping, and that is going to help. The impact is to get crops to a more global market exchange, and that is really going to help farmers get what they're growing into all sorts of markets, and it won't just end at the community level. It can be on a global level. Okay, that brings us to the last, which is on that next page, a positive and negative effects chart, what I would do is just quickly go through and underline or highlight some things. Some positives here is obviously we have less starvation on a global level. It really did help some developing countries like Mexico and India export their food. And then it brought prices lower on a global level. Those are all positives. Now, negatives is we do see a loss of family farms, especially if we're switching to this capital investment farming. Let me move my box here. And then more machinery meant, right, we are decreasing the human labor force. So a lot of women in developing countries lost their jobs due to this technology change. And then, of course, it's going to be bad for, like, there's going to be some environmental devastation, such as soil depletion and desertification, which we'll talk more in some upcoming standards. And last is just not all regions actually benefited from the Green Revolution. Africa still lags way behind in agricultural production. All right, guys, it concludes 5.5. I told you to go fast. Whoop, whoop, here we are, 5.6, y'all, moving right along. And this standard probably goes faster than any of them. I know you don't believe me, but we are talking in the standard about differences in regions and the farming methods that are used. So before we get started, you definitely need to write in your notes the difference between subsistence and commercial farming. So pretty straightforward. Commercial farming is just like it sounds, okay? It's primarily farming to make a profit, okay? That's what commercial agriculture is. Subsistence, exact opposite. You are growing for your family, and you are going to consume all the food that you grow. That's it. You are not growing for a profit. All right, I'm going to give you a quick example for each of those to put in your example column there. So for commercial agriculture, you might put the United States, and wheat is going to be a commercial crop. And for subsistence, a region that uses this is going to be sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, they use a lot of subsistence farming. And like I said earlier, they do really lag behind on agriculture technology advancements. All right, now I have to apologize to you guys because I did really not a good job of setting up your notes from here on out. So what I would suggest is maybe make this column from here down where it says workforce. I would do a commercial column, just make this your commercial column, and then make that far right column subsistence. What I'm going to do is go through each of these concepts here, and you'll just make a quick note of how like types of machines in commercial farming is different from subsistence. Okay, and I apologize for not doing a better job with that. All right, let's get going. Here we are. This map shows how many people are employed in farming, basically. And so the darker purple areas you see trending up to 90% of people in that country are farmers, okay? Versus look at 0 to 5% in some of these really light, almost white areas. So we see these trends, and we want to be really good at recognizing these trends. So what I would write down for some quick examples is, look at this, United States, the percentage of people that are farmers is 0.7%. That's from 2009. I want to say it might be a little higher now. I think it's closer to 2%, but still, guys, really low, goodness. And then we look at a place like India, where the labor force of Indians, that 47% of Indians are farmers. I want to say in Rwanda, it's 73% of Rwandans are farmers, okay? So the takeaway here is that we see higher numbers engaged in agriculture are going to be in less developed countries. And so those subsistence farming areas are going to be places like sub-Saharan Africa, where you do see farmers 50% to 70% or even 90%, right? And then in places like the United States, we have less than 2% of, and that's going to be commercial farming. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's move on to types of machines. So this map is showing tractors per 100 square miles, or kilometers per arable land. Remember, that's farmable land. And so in these dark red, even maroon areas, we are seeing more tractors being used. Shouldn't surprise you, North America there again, and Europe. So I would definitely make a note that those are commercial areas. And then where do we see no tractors at all in these white areas? Gosh, again, sub-Saharan Africa. So these darker red areas are kind of indicating the haves versus the have-nots. And we again see the developed versus developing countries. So that's types of machines. And then we look at farm size. Farm size is another indicator of whether it's commercial versus subsistence. So what we see in commercial farming, and this graph shows it quite well, we see farms by the millions drop significantly in the 1960s. Wow, crazy. But what's going up? The average farm size. So in your commercial column, I would definitely say you see a loss of number of farms, but within those farms, we see size of a farm increase. Okay. And then it's going to be the exact opposite for subsistence. Okay. You're going to see more farms and they're going to be smaller. Okay. And the reason that we see this in commercial is look at this picture right here. Like one person can own all that land and farm it all by themselves because, right, we have this machinery and equipment and advancement. All right, let's look at productivity. Hope you guys are getting the hang of this. How does this all connect to productivity? Well, so pretty self-explanatory is if we're in commercial, we rely on machines, so there's less labor force being used, right? And then when we see in subsistence, we see more people and we see more tools being used instead of big machinery, okay? Subsistence farmer does need a lot of labor. It does need a lot of investment. And commercial is going to just see a lot of growth in, less people with less labor. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, and how does this connect to agribusiness? When we think of commercial farming, we want to think of it as like this, like huge interconnected network of the market, the seeds, the machine, everything that goes into like buying the land and growing and transforming before it all gets to our kitchen and on our tables and in our daily lives. That's commercial, and that is very much agribusiness. Subsistence farming is nothing. It's agribusiness is not even existent in subsistence farming. Subsistence farming is much more connected to individuals and family and small community-based markets. Okay. This last concept that we're going to talk about is going to be bid rent theory. And that is just the idea of where you have your town, okay? And the further you get away in distance from the town, the less the land is going to cost. But the closer you get to town, the more expensive the land is going to cost. So this goes back to intensive versus extensive farming. So remember, intensive is where you need a lot of labor, okay, and the farms are small, versus extensive, where you need a lot of land and not a lot of people, and you're using machines and advancement. So the idea here, and what you can put for your example, is that this is a rural bid rent theory model. So like, let's say right in the middle, right, your town is more where you can have your market, gardening, and dairy because it's perishable. The further we get away, and we see this ring, so the further we get away, we see that extensive farming. So you're going to think of, fields of wheat and corn, right? But then beyond that, you're going to have animal farming where the land is the least expensive. And that's ranching, guys. Like, so open fields of cheap land with cows on them. Okay, so that is the model for bid rent theory in the rural setting. We will also talk about this again when we get to our urbanization unit, which is our next unit, unit 6. But I'm not going to get into that now because you just want to be familiar with the rural bid rent theory. All right, guys, we're done. 5.6 is over. I told you it was fast.